Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to the channel. And today, it's the final time to talk about Fafnir as he relates to Godforge Alpha. Many of you are striving to reach that first 1,000 people to defeat him and reach 151, and so I'm going to be here as a resource for you to understand his mechanics, how to manage the damage that he's outputting on your team, and then what you need on your team to defeat him. So without further ado, let's get into it. Fafnir has two forms, Enraged and Exhausted. I did a video recently on how to defeat Fafnir, and I didn't really go through his mechanics and what he did and his abilities, so I wanted to make sure and spend some time and look over them right now. Now, very quickly, he always has passives that enable him to basically increase damage as he casts Divinity, so continually ramping up damage over the fight, and that he is immune to increase and decrease Divinity cost abilities and lock debuffs. He also receives reduced incoming damage from damage over time abilities. And then finally, when his turn meter is reduced, he gains immunity to it until his next turn. And when divinity is reduced, he gains immunity to it until his next turn. So let's talk about his abilities when he is enraged. And enraged is when he is standing up attacking your team. Exhausted is when he's laying down on his belly. His basic ability is Burn to the Core, which attacks all enemies 2 times. Each hit activates Blaze 3 on enemies. Well, that Blaze 3 comes from Dragonfire, which is his core. And this attacks all enemies and it places Blaze 3 on enemies for 5 turns. That's a lot of damage over time. Not to mention that when he comes back in with his basic, he's going to be activating those. And then Flames of Fafnir, this is his ultimate. Attack all enemies, continuously activates Blaze 3 on enemies until Blaze has been consumed. So any further stacks you have of Blaze on your team when he uses his ultimate ability in his enraged form, he's going to be activating all of them to do more and more damage. Fafnir heals himself by 20% of his max HP and places Drain 3 on himself for 3 turns and becomes exhausted. This is when he then lays down on the battlefield and his abilities change until his next ultimate. But let's go through these real quick. That is passive Frailty of Fire. He gains 50 divinity when placing Blaze on enemies and gains 5 divinity when enemies are damaged by Blaze. If enemies block or resist it, Fafnir will gain 25 divinity. So if you want to bring in high resistance and not get all the damage over time, that can help you and help mitigate a lot of damage. However, it's not going to stop his divinity growth. It will decrease it by half, which is great. But if you can, manage those stats, that's a great way to, decrease the amount of damage you're getting all in all, but it can be pretty challenging for builds at this state. When Fafnir receives a disable, he removes that disable and decreases his divinity by 25. This is doubled when freeze is placed on Fafnir, and if he receives a blaze, it increases his divinity by 100. For those of you who got YDG as your first legendary and built him up, he is not going to be a great hero for this fight. I used him and really struggled and ended up having to use just his primary ability once I got there, and this was on stage 90. You see, at 90, he was the only primary damage dealer I had to get through the waves, and so I had to use him for that, and then basically just manually use his basic ability every single turn once fighting Fafnir. Now in previous waves, I did utilize this freeze mechanic with Scotty, and while it didn't seem to do too much, it did have its effects, and reducing 50 divinity when placing freeze once per turn because he becomes immune to it after it's done once, it can help you. Now let's talk about Enraged. This is his final passive. Fafnir has a 100% chance to place Blaze 3 for 1 turn on enemies when attacking. This chance is reduced by 25% for each unique hero archetype on the enemy team. Fafnir deals 50% increased damage to enemies under Blaze, and when Fafnir's turn meter is reduced, he activates Burn to the Core, and that is his basic ability, which again attacks all enemies and each hit can activate Blaze. And so you don't want to be putting out too many decreased turn meter effects or any at all, because it's going to make him spit out more and more basic abilities, causing more and more damage, more difficult for you to take that. Now this particular mechanic, reducing something by 25% for each unique hero type on the enemy team. I say something because it's actually going to come up several times in his kit. And so if you can bring multiple hero archetypes, a defender, a slayer, an invoker, a brawler, anything like that, that's going to continually decrease that ability. And so by bringing in a variety of types of heroes on your team, and you're going to see even on my team that I do that as well, it's going to really kneecap some of his abilities, including ones like this. And so by reducing up to, to my understanding, 100% for each unique hero type, that's a pretty incredible thing. And so when you see my fight, you're going to see that this ability doesn't really happen very much. They don't get a lot of blazes because there's so many different archetypes on my team. Now, the exhausted form. This has the same passives that we talked about earlier: Mythic Divinity, Mythic Resilience, and Mythic Persistence. I think these abilities are going to be kind of like those standard abilities we see on most bosses. But his basic ability is Eternal Being. Attacks all enemies, increases the duration of debuffs by 1 turn on the enemy, and increases Fafnir's Divinity by 50 for each debuff duration increased. Now you can really extend his exhausted form if you are building high res teams, but again, especially in alpha and the amount of gear, unless you're farming a ton, that high resistance is going to be difficult to achieve. If you do have Sphinx, who is a great defender to bring onto your team, and has some key debuffs for really decreasing the damage he's outputting, this could be helpful because her leader bonus is resistance and can really help your team achieve those numbers. Then his core is Burning Embers, attacks all enemies, transfers all debuffs from Fafnir onto each enemy. The chance to transfer is reduced by 25% for each unique hero archetype on the enemy team. Again, bringing those archetypes, multiple types of heroes onto a team is really going to help you in not receiving all those debuffs. And then Fafnir Awakens, attacks all enemies. Damage inflicted is increased by 50% if the enemy is under vulnerable 3. Increases Fafnir's max HP, defense, and attack by 5% for each enemy under a debuff, and becomes enraged. And so yeah, this can really start to boost his stats. It brings him back into the enraged form, but this is a hard-hitting one, and putting vulnerable 3 on the enemy as well really increases the damage here. His passive's Venomous Breath has a 100% chance to place acid in vulnerable 3 for 1 turn when attacking enemies. Chance is reduced by 10% for each unique hero archetype on the enemy team. So the devs clearly didn't want this ability to become mute. They definitely want to be able to place vulnerable 3 in acid, but they do decrease the chance for unique hero archetypes. So you can do, I believe you can get this down to 50%. My team doesn't get it down to 50%. I think it probably drops it by 40, and it can really mess you up. Getting that vulnerable 3 on your team is no bueno. Snake Sorcery increases Fafnir's Divinity by 50 for each time a debuff is placed on an enemy. If they resist or block it, they gain 20 Divinity instead. So guys, the reality is that high res is really going to help you. And I think when it comes down to it, Fafnir at the end of the day, remember, he is a dungeon boss. I think a high res, high damage, perhaps someone who is healing themselves when they apply damage, it's going to be pretty easy to solo him in live game. But we'll see. We have yet to figure that out. And then Exhausted. Fafnir receives 20% increased damage when under a debuff. This is increased by an additional 5% for each unique hero type on the enemy team. When Fafnir's turn meter is reduced, he heals by 1% equal to the turn meter reduced. So by bringing in those debuffs, bringing the damage, and ensuring that you have what you need to be able to take him down, it's only going to increase the damage you're doing during the exhausted form. So let's get to the hero builds, and then we'll see the fight in action. Remember guys, my channel is really young. In fact, just reaching about 5 months at the end of this month, and I've been seeing some incredible growth. So thank you so much for your support. Make sure and like and subscribe down below, and share this content in your communities for those who may be needing help. Now, my team is not I guess what we would say in live game, a free-to-play friendly team, but these heroes are completely accessible to everybody in the alpha, assuming you have the time, the bandwidth, and the damage output to be able to farm effectively. I received most of these heroes from stage 125. Shout out to members of the community and some of the mods for Fateless for pointing that out to me, that was a great wave to take down. And man, yeah, that 125 really spits out the legendary. So if you can farm, or if you're looking for legendaries and wondering where to get them, go to stage 125, farm it, and you're going to get a lot of resources for ascending your eternal heroes, as well as a significantly decent drop rate for legendary heroes. So for Shamash, I didn't really focus very much on anything other than getting speed on him. I wanted to make sure that he was getting divinity. I honestly could put more initiative on him. I wanted to, but right now I did not do a lot of gear farming for this, and so I was really working with what I had in my inventory. And in terms of what could be done, that's probably my weakest point on this account, is the fact that I had some good gear, but not a lot of it. I think at one point I was able to build out 3 crit capped damage dealers at a time, which is great, but it was literally all of the damage dealing gear I could, and I was really just strapped for maximizing other stats in those builds. But Shamash, with his speed, was able to get out as many abilities as he could, get his divinity up, getting increased attack and radiance, and really just getting that ally attack is what I was looking for from him. For Awakening 3, I was lucky enough to get multiple copies of him. His first one, the Aether Burn, can't be resisted on his core ability, but then Awakening 3 is that it also places a reflect for 1 turn on allies who join attack. Now, I manualed this fight. It did not necessarily cause a great effect, the reflect, because I didn't think through that a whole lot, but that does certainly put more damage out. I didn't have a particular need for him when it came to imprints, so I went ahead and put Heart's Echo. This is the Isolde passive on him, because why not? More healing. He didn't have the highest HP, but even still, it was a little bit, and every little bit goes a long way in this fight. Isolde's passive is going to be critical for many things. But then there comes the waves, and you'll notice my video that I put out earlier this week, I talked about how it was actually the wave content that made me have to restart Fafnir. Once I finally got to him, I defeated him the first time, but it was the wave content that was really a challenge. And using Hel, because she was at that point my highest damage dealer that didn't have, like Blaze or anything like that, she was a critical hero in this. And I will start off real quick. I mean, obviously you can see crit capped, crit damage as much as possible, and frankly this actually isn't that much crit damage. It's a very achievable build. Attack is pretty poor. Really what I was looking for and what I attempted and found great success in was not only using this ability, the Naginata, that increases AoE attacks by 25%. You can see this isn't even maxed out. But then for the imprint guys, I actually used Hand of Duat's imprint, which is when attacking enemies places a barrier on this hero for 5% of the damage inflicted. So Hel was doing more and more damage from her AoEs because of this weapon, but then putting a massive barrier on her during those waves because she's a glass cannon. She's going to get completely obliterated once she starts getting attacked. And for all of those times that I was struggling in waves to keep my nuker from dying, this would have been a great resource to use. And so guys, if you're even struggling to get past certain levels, and I think like 142 is its own unique experience, that is a real big struggle. I actually struggled a lot on it this round for the first time. Actually, in this wave of Alpha, I really struggled on 142 for the first time. But by placing this barrier on your damage dealer, especially when they do tons of damage, it's really a great asset for your hero to be able to not necessarily do anything against Fafnir, because they're only going to be doing a single damage and it's not a lot. But when they just do like half HP or full HP on several heroes, that barrier is going to just spike, and you're going to see that in the gameplay as well. And so by building her this way, making sure she had as much crit and crit damage as I could do, because I actually focused more on Beowulf for my damage so that I would have it come Fafnir, she really helped clear those waves and get through that content. Now, I mentioned him just now, so let's go to him. Beowulf. 105 crit rate, 212.5 crit damage, 4.5k attack. This was the build, guys. This is what I did, everything I maximized to be able to use him to do as much damage inside of Fafnir on the fight itself that I could, because Beowulf is the boss slayer. He does significantly more damage to bosses than almost any other hero, just based off of their skills themselves, and it's just awesome. For my experience, he holds up decently well to Guan Yu, and doesn't require, you know, the drain to be applied to do all this damage. Now, you will see here, and it's a little bit of a spoiler for the rest of my team, I have the Blood Sword on him, which inflicts 30% increased damage to targets under bleed. And guys, it's almost maxed. I didn't fully max it out. I didn't spend the time farming the material to do that, but I do have Osiris's imprint. When above 50% HP, increased damage this hero inflicts by 10%. Again, just trying to maximize damage. I do place bleed in this fight. I think bleed is an absolute clutch mechanic for both bosses in the caverns, and so whomever you bring for that, you definitely want to have it. And then your other damage dealer, who's going to be doing primarily damage from their abilities themselves, slap a blood sword on them, do as much as you can, get crit damage on it, and you are going to be really pleased with the damage output you get. So I don't have any gear sets on him. I was really just trying to get as much of the primary stats as possible. You can see even here, I put a flat stat attack helmet on him because I was getting of the other stats on here. Getting that 20% crit, I was able to mitigate needing another crit piece because of all the other stats. That attack percent, 24.5 on a substat. This piece was a beautiful piece. If I could have gotten something else in the primary stat or something, that would have been amazing, but I was still happy, and this is really what helped me like boost that attack up so much. And guys, let me know down in the comments below. Sometimes I really struggle when watching content creators on exactly how they're getting these stats, and so I am going to walk through this just briefly, and you can slow down if you'd like, but let me know if this is helpful or not. Because what I chose to do, I really wanted crit damage gauntlets, but I just couldn't build it out. So I did have to do crit rate on the gauntlets, a rank 4 piece. This is one of my best, you know, pauldrons. I really struggle to have a lot of good pauldrons this wave, but crit damage is where it came from. I got some more speed, some more attack here, which helped boost those stats. And you can see in all the other pieces that I am really just, I was looking for pieces that had decent amount of crit rates so I could reach that crit cap and really try not to have 2 pieces of gear that needed crit rate. My boots are speed, crit rate, attack, crit damage. The only thing that could make this better obviously is a higher rank or an attack percent on the boots and the substats. But I mean, I was very pleased with this build. This gear has actually gone over, most of it has actually gone over to Zeus now that I got him as a reward from 150, and it's doing incredible damage. So very happy with this gear. Would love an increase on rank in like the chest, the pauldrons, and the boots, of course. And I mean, if anybody's going to give me a rank 5 piece of gear, I will absolutely replace it. But guys, 212 crit damage, I was pretty pleased with that right now. And I still have a little bit more, I think 8% more crit damage to add to this weapon. And so a really good piece, could max this out at 220.5, and it really, really helped bring in the damage. Now, I'm trying to think through, okay, now I have 2 more. There is my Defender, which is Heimdall. Again, farmed him all the way up to Awakening 4. I'm so close to Awakening 5. I would love to get him so I can actually use that ability of automatically placing his ultimate ability and being able to grant that shield at the start of each wave. Gosh, one of the best, I feel like, Awakening 5 abilities in the entire game. Not quite there yet, but he was absolutely necessary in being able to survive, bringing in the Retaliate, bringing in the massive shields. You can see right here that I have 4.7k defense on him. And while that is great and very helpful, I think I actually want to sacrifice some of that for more initiative if I was going to be rebuilding him, because I just wasn't getting the divinity that I needed in this fight to be able to see that damage, to see his divinity grow and use it more often. However, Heimdall in his gear, you can see here that it's not even, a lot of it's not even maxed. I was just trying to boost as much defense as I could with the pieces I had. Again, guys, I did not farm a ton of gear for this. I am using flat stats. I did aim to get bear 4 so I can have that defense plus 30%, and that's why I have a flat stat defense. It's why I have a flat stat HP, because at the end of the day it actually gave me more defense to use the set than trying to maximize the other stats. And frankly, by bringing in more HP, it did make him a little beefier, which was great. So by doing that, defense on the pauldron, defense on the chest, flat defense again on the legs, just maximizing that bear set, and then speed on the boots. This is not a build that I love, but I do love the amount of defense it has. Barely equipped weapon. I could give him even more defense if I had a max weapon on him, but gain turn meter when attacked and the Assault passive. Absolutely necessary on him. And then finally, guys, it is Dracula. Now, the only difference in this guy is that when I fought Fafnir, he was Awakened 4 versus Awakened 5, but his Awakening 5 had no effect on this, or would have had no effect on this fight, because whenever Sleep Disable expires on this hero, it instantly activates Sanguine Tides and heals by 10% of the damage inflicted. He never fell asleep, so it had no effect. He is built with no crit rate, no crit damage, as to say, accuracy, initiative, and not even a whole lot of speed, guys. I was pushing, actually, I wanted to make sure he had what he needed to be able to place those bleeds, because the majority of his damage, if not all of his damage, is coming from the bleeds, the damage over time, or the dot effects as they're referred to, on Fafnir. And you're going to see in the fight that it's just incredible. And really, Dracula has been my MVP of damage for bosses in this entire wave, because I wasn't able to get it on recorded, but when I fought the Golden Guardian on 120, he was literally the last standing hero. He survived the ultimate. It's his bleeds that got the Golden Guardian down to 1%, and really just a great hero for that. I did really strive to get Avenger 4-piece so that I could grant 25% chance of counterattacking, which really is just, again, stacking the bleeds. His weapon it increases the ultimate ability by 12%. I could absolutely increase this, give him more HP, give him more accuracy. I just didn't have the resources and didn't want to farm. I wanted to get this done. And he has the Assault passive because he is a brawler, and I built him with as much HP as I could. And so he's going to be bringing out, more than, I think, 1,200 healing every single time that Heimdall is hit, which is really great. So guys, those are the builds. Shamash as the leader. We're bringing in Hell as the wave clearer, Heimdall general support, Beowulf as the just core damage dealer on Fafnir, and then Dracula for the bleeds over time, the damage over time effects on the dragon as well. So without further ado, guys, let's go ahead and get into it. I do include the waves here because frankly, I feel like the combination of wave management and Fafnir is one of the most challenging parts of this fight on 150, and really was a struggle for me even on like stage 90 or stage 120. And so guys, check this out. I'm gonna leave it playing in the background, and yeah, I'll see you at the end. All right, and here we go, guys. That is it. That is the Dragon Fafnir 150, defeated finally by bleed, and yet so much more damage. You can see here that my rewards were Zeus and Dracula, and I mean, gosh, I love Zeus. My boy came home to the account. Wave 3, got him in all 3 waves, and he is just an incredible hero. But you can see here that the damage, let me remove myself real quick. Dracula is bringing in 2.16 million damage on Fafnir, and basically Fafnir alone. You can see in the fight that he really did very little on the waves. And then he actually out-damaged Beowulf, but just by a little bit. Beowulf bringing in 2.15 million damage. A little bit of that is from the waves, but primarily, again, on Fafnir. You can see with every single ability that Beowulf used, it just chunked Fafnir's HP. Not as much as the bleeds, but still, it's the combination of those two things that really enabled this team to do maximum damage to the boss and defeat him. There was so many clutch moments of having Heimdall on the team, of using Shamash for his ultimate ability, and all those kinds of things that helped this team do damage. You can see that I didn't even utilize Hel's ability. Her ultimate places a decreased defense on a boss instead of, you know, the revive. It places decreased defense. If I had built her with more accuracy, I could have absolutely used that ability, but I really struggled to get that accuracy up while also making sure there was enough damage to wave clear and all kinds of things like that. I wasn't interested in trying to min-max that because I just wanted to get through the waves. And so by excluding that, I was focusing more on bleed and just relying on Beowulf. I think that if there was a decreased defense out on the boss, Beowulf would have probably just slightly increased his damage and he would have been the MVP of all damage, but regardless, guys, this was the team. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. I plan on live streaming later this week, and so join me there if you are really struggling and want to talk about how to overcome the challenge. And so yeah, again, like, subscribe, join me in my live streams, and I'll see you in the next one.